like to thank you both for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your background.
My name's Peter Van Yperen. I'm a coder by trade. I started coding when I was 12, professionally when I was 16. I've held senior executive titles. I've started and successfully exited startups. I've consulted with everything from law enforcement to financial insurance companies. I've held senior leadership roles in security, got lots of security certifications. And I write about security, and I actually teach secure coding at NYU as well.
So my name is Zach Montoya. I've been in IT work for 7 years now. I work currently at the University of New Mexico in the Health Sciences Center under the Chief Information Office. I've been in that current position for about 2 years now. I do a lot of both system administration and tier 2 tech work right now.
So my first question for you guys is, why is it important to destroy a hard drive when you're done with it, or at the very least, erase it properly? Believe it or not, we actually hear stories of people throwing their machines away in the trash. So why is that not advisable, and why is it important to properly dispose of your hard drive?
The first reason is when you delete something, you don't actually delete it. And I'm not just talking about moving it to trash on your hard drive. I'm actually talking about moving it to trash is actually not even deleted at all. That's actually just marking it as essentially, I don't want this anymore.
If you just throw out a computer and you don't do anything to the hard drive, you can boot that computer up and you can read every single piece of data on there. And that can be terribly dangerous. I mean, if you have patient data on there, that's $10,000 a pop on each violation you find there. Or if you just throw out a computer without erasing your hard drive, you're asking yourself for problems.
I know that different machines use different types of storage these days. There's actual spinning hard drives and solid state drives. So is there a difference in the way that needs to be handled in terms of disposal? And is there a end of life date for that sort of electronic equipment?
Yes and no. In my position, we have a hard end of life at like 5 or 6 years, depending on the device. Ultimately, it's up to the amount of reads and writes on a solid state drive. There is a hard maximum on a solid state drive. On a hard drive, that's completely dependent on the physical wear and tear of the device, because it is actually physically moving inside of your computer. I've seen solid state drives that die in 5 years, and these are devices that we are really putting through the ringer. They're public use devices. They have deep freeze on them, so they're getting wiped every single log or every time somebody logs in. But I've also seen hard drives last 10, 15 years also.
It's different. It's different in the sense of the platters. It's different in the sense of how you recover data from it. Is it different in the sense of needing to destroy it? No.
The ones that are a little bit funky now are one of the devices I'm taking this call on right now is a Mac. You can't remove drives out of a Mac these days.
So what are some of the more common ways of erasing or disposing of a hard drive?
So we use a tool called Wipe Drive in my organization. What that essentially does is it will take several passes over the drive, writing ones or zeros over the drive, so that if somebody wants to find this hard drive, they can't just go and plug it into a computer and read the drive without doing more than that. If you want to really be careful, there's also the degaussing that you mentioned. That will essentially remove the magnetic ability of the platters on that drive, and you won't be able to pull any data off of that.
Military overwrite, intelligence overwrite, triple overwrite, alternating bit flipping, things like that. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to basically 1-0-1-0-1-0, or basically eradicate everything. With degauss essentially resets everything to 0, right?
And then of course you have physical destruction, shredding the drive, bashing with a hammer, throwing it in the microwave like you see on TV, stuff like that.
I even read a story about some computer scientists who bought a number of hard drives off of eBay, and they said they were able to recover something like information off of 74% of these drives. So I'm thinking probably destruction is going to be really the only method. Are any of these erasure methods going to be up to the same standard as physical destruction?
Ultimately, it's as secure as you want to believe it to be. I mean, I actually do that myself. Every once in a while, I'll go and buy a lot of hard drives off of eBay, and sure enough, I see not quite that high, 74%. I see maybe half that I'm able to recover on, but still, that's terrifying. If you want that peace of mind, destruction, shredding is probably the best method.
The world of forensics around hard drives, given their value in criminal cases, intelligence gathering, etc., there is a war chest of tools out there if I really, really, really want to try to recover someone's hard drive. If you go and industrially shred it and melt it down, it's going to be really hard for me to get anything from that.
There are, of course, other methods that are way above my head. Pulling out the drives inside of a clean room and magnetically analyzing them to try and look at the raw data on there. And that's something I'm totally unfamiliar with. I know the processes exist, but
it's fully possible that you could overwrite all of the bits of a document and leave in the bits of a social security number, and that just lives on a hard drive and floats around. There's this kind of mythology that like drilling a hole in it does the job. That's superfluous based on what I just said about the fact that you could fully eliminate all of a document and keep the social security number floating around on the hard drive. Yeah, it damages one section of it. It does not damage the hard drive. And if I'm really going to try to recover it, I'm not trying to spin the platters anyway. So,
like with a hard drive, you still have that disk in there, and on some level, there is a chance that on some wafer or on some layer of that magnetic drive, there is still a piece of information. And that little piece of information could be a name and a social security number. And if that gets out, I mean, it's a super dangerous piece of information. If you're shredding that drive, there are very few methods to go and actually look at that information.
What are some of the environmental issues with improperly disposing of your computer or hard drive?
If you're not e-recycling these devices, I mean, they just end up in a landfill, fill in the landfill with heavy metals and all the toxic metals that are built or that are used to make computers. I mean, there's mercury in some of them. You don't want that getting out into the environment and getting into the water supplies and harming the local wildlife.
Listen, what exists inside of a computer is, one, there's some value to it, but two, is also there's some really nasty and gnarly things that can go into a computer, and it's not a good idea to just chuck your computer, period, anyway.
Are there any dangers or precautions somebody should take when looking at e-recycling?
But that goes back to, again, even if you're going to dispose of your computer or your hard drives through an e-recycling program, which I'm a fan of, if you're not going to physically, like, they're not sensitive enough, you need to physically destroy them, you at least need to run several overwrites over the drives, because there's a good chance that those drives are going to show up again. It's great. You might be putting a computer in a kid's hands, but you might also be putting your tax records in someone else's hands who knows that kid, right?
I mean, if the device is still in somewhat newer condition, that can still be passed off to a charitable organization, Goodwill, who be it. But of course, you gotta wipe your hard drive before you do that.
What would be your advice for anybody who's still just planning on throwing their computer in the trash or not disposing of it properly?
You just allowed me to legally, or as close to legally as I can get, steal your identity. Trash, once it is dragged to a curb, is public goods. You no longer have ownership of it. When I teach hacking courses, going through trash is a old-fashioned way of building dossiers, and intelligence services have been doing it for years. Thieves, identity thieves, do it. A hard drive is a treasure trove of all your personal data. And if I want to steal your identity, steal your money, potentially blackmail you, gain access somewhere, and it's just sitting out there. But once I have it, you can't even do anything about it.
The best way to think about it is all it takes is one person coming along, digging through your trash, and then, oh, look, a computer. Here's this person's entire life. Yeah, the device may be password protected, but if it's a Windows device and it's not encrypted, that's so easy to get past if you have hands-on device.
Listen, from a perspective of doing no good in the world and being nefarious, there's nothing I would like more than to go find a dumpster full of hard drives. It would make my job as a not good doer so much easier than basically anything else you could provide to me.
Or you do that. I mean, do you do a quick search on Craigslist? You could find Joe the computer guy doing data erasure services. Now, do you trust Joe the computer guy? That's kind of the trick. It's probably best to go with a big box store or a big box computer company locally.
Yeah.
People have moral limits, hard drives don't.